One fear people mention when we talk about investing overseas is that if they do that, the government's just going to come in and take their property or impose some new burden on them. And today I'm going to tell you why I believe that's not realistic and it shouldn't stop you from diversifying internationally. Here's my fundamental belief. You have countries that want to be competitive, or at least realize they have to be competitive. That's a culture, and I've told you for years that culture matters. A self-awareness, just as self-awareness is important for human beings, a self-awareness about a country's position in the world, what its problems are, what its realities are, where it wants to go versus where it is now. These are all things that can drive the culture of the people as well as the government to encourage or discourage investment. And so you have legacy brand countries like the United States, like Australia, where they just assume the gravy's going to always come in. And to some extent it does. I can tell you, traveling all around the world, I don't meet that many people who are moderately successful who would like to move to the United States. You see people in Malaysia, if you want to move to the UK, but most of them want to stay where they're at because they see the potential in their own country. This, huge movement to legacy brand countries, both of people and capital, I believe is going to be in a downward trend in the years to come. I believe the better investment opportunities for at least part of your portfolio are going to be in other countries. And if you think that the government in those other countries is scary, let me disabuse you of that notion now. I'm Andrew Henderson, founder of Nomad Capitalist. We have spent a decade helping over 1,000 high and ultra high net worth individuals all around the world, entrepreneurs and investors, legally reduce their taxes overseas, increase their freedom with dual citizenship, and grow their opportunities all around the world. And I do believe, if you look at the economies, they're going to be much bigger than they are now. If you believe in the countries, look at the countries that have higher yields, higher returns, lower taxes, better treatment, easier to manage, fewer restrictions, fewer regulations, no rent control, whatever it is you're looking for, you can find that. If you're an American, how about less litigation? How about a lower risk for properties in your rental portfolio that someone doesn't trip and fall down the stairs and sue you for gazillions of dollars? So I believe your country either wants to be competitive or not. And so when I say go where you're treated best, I mean go to where your capital is wanted. And so where the culture has universal basic income, they don't want investors. They just figure they'll print their way into prosperity. How's that worked so far? Well, it hasn't. But in countries where they can't print money, they've actually got to do something of value. In countries where they don't have the world reserve currency, they don't have a huge base of people that they know aren't going to leave, and they're just going to keep paying taxes no matter what they do. In countries where people are immigrating or they just don't care because they just, hey, we have this kind of large position. Those countries you don't want, and those countries are harder to invest. I mean, look at it. If you want to get a higher yield on your property in Berlin by doing Airbnb, you can't do that. Right? A lot of places shut that down. And so you want to look at places where they're either open to investment or where there's a certain desperation. We interviewed the controversial President Saakashvili of Georgia. He came into power about 20 years ago in the small country of Georgia and said, we're a small country. We were not so long ago a communist country and under the USSR, and we need to do something to be competitive. Let's grow our country. I've seen what they do in the US. I've been to Singapore. Let's be that. Let's raise our standard. And there was this desire of, hey, there's a great opportunity here. Let's take advantage of it. What brings in people? Pushing them away? Making demands of them? No. So that kind of leadership in a certain country is what is going to bring that open culture. And so if a country wants you to buy property there, invest, hire, whether it's because they're running TV ads as he does, or because, let's say, they're offering you citizenship if you come and buy a property, or because they're offering you residence because you come and buy a property. To me, the likelihood that they're going to roll out the red carpet and say, please come and take our citizenship, which I can tell you, countries are very reticent to want to give out. Now, if you live there and you learn the culture, okay, that's understood. That's like having a long-term girlfriend. A lot of people look at like, hey, come and buy a property and get citizenship in 6 months. Like, it's a little distasteful. A lot of politicians don't like that. So a place where they're like, Turkey, buy any property in the open market. We need foreign cash. Open a bank account, bring in your foreign currency, convert it to lira, buy a property, rent it out if you want, sell it in 3 years if you want. Just bring your money, we'll give you citizenship, you can get a passport. For the rest of your life, you can travel around the world. This idea that then they're going to sit around, hey, did you see that guy's apartment over there in the Shantashi? Oh yeah, guy has a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment with a balcony. You know what, go over there and take it from him. Like, is that really, are they really sitting around saying that? Now, we're talking to folks. We have clients up into, multi-billionaires. The average client is going to have either, from a few million up to, 100 or some $1 million. And so am I telling these people, hey, go buy some factory somewhere. Go buy a factory of great significance. Generally not. And there may be a couple of places where if you want to buy a factory, they'll also give you citizenship in kind of a non-traditional way. But for me, we're talking about buying real estate, buying apartments, maybe starting some kind of business in a country that is tax friendly. They're putting these policies in place so that you come there. And so this idea that some thug is going to come and take your $112,000 apartment, to me, is just kind of silly. Countries are literally simplifying their tax codes in some cases for foreigners to make it easier. They're doing the steps because they want your business. This is when I say countries should be competitive. The same way restaurants are competitive. Are you going to go to McDonald's? Are you going to go to In-N-Out? Or are you going to go to Five Guys? Look at the trajectory just in burger restaurants in the last couple of decades. This, good burger restaurant in the US and the UK and Ireland and other countries is a trend that, a lot of people are saying, hey, I will pay a little bit more and I'll go to the place with a good burger. That same mentality, again, whether it's openness or desperation, is in these other countries. Where they are taking your assets is in, let's say, the United States, where there was a private vault in Beverly Hills. This is just one of many stories. And they just took everyone's stuff because one guy had a vault there. One guy had a safe deposit box in a private facility, and he was alleged to have been involved in, drugs and whatever other nasty stuff. And everyone's stuff got taken, and you had to fight for years to do it. The U.S. has civil forfeiture laws. They just come and take your money, and it's the United States of America versus $27,000 in cash. And how do you win that, right? How do you put up a defense? It is difficult. And they can just say, oh, you're buying a car in cash? Yeah, that seems weird. We'll just take the cash. There's plenty of stories like that. Now, the fact that it hasn't happened to you is irrelevant. And so what you see is people who will say, oh, well, I live in the US and no one's taken my cash so far. Okay, that's great. I've invested in countries all around the world. No one's come and taken my properties. So we can play anecdotal games all we want. Sure, you can say there are certain countries where if you're on the wrong side of politics, maybe you get screwed with. Here's my advice when you go and invest overseas, you don't need to get involved in politics. If you have an issue with the politics, don't do it. People have certain misconceptions about countries. I don't invest in countries with this religion, or I don't invest in countries with this region, right? Or that's too close to Russia, or that's this, or that's that. I don't necessarily agree. I mean, people ask me my thoughts on investing in Georgia, for example. I bought an office in Georgia. I own 2 apartments in Georgia. I have land in Georgia. I have been upgrading my positions in Georgia in the last year or two. So let my money speak for itself. Let the financial decisions that I've made speak for themselves in terms of whether I believe there's some kind of threat. People have this idea, that if you have a property and some geopolitical issue happens, that there's going to be some grave threat. You know what happened to property in Tbilisi? It doubled. If you were watching me in 2017, 16, 15, talking about Tbilisi and you bought property, you made a lot of money. I think people overstate the risks of geopolitical issues when in some cases, property in Istanbul as well has gone through the roof, even after inflation, even after downward pressure on the currency. It's up double digits because people are going for citizenship, they're going for geopolitical reasons. And so people are overestimating those risks. And then they're underestimating the risks where they live. We help people get citizenship. We've done a number of citizenships in Turkey. Okay, listen, come back in 20 years. But so far, no one's had their property taken. Again, I've been doing this for many years. Never lost anything. Now, you can look at geopolitical issues. Look at Russia, for example, during the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war. Foreigners were not able to liquidate positions in Russian stocks that were based in Russia. And so, okay, that is a geopolitical issue. I do think that there will be some nuance and some kind of stuff in the future where, let's say if you're Indian, if you're Chinese, there may be more flexibility in that kind of situation where, hey, you're in the side of the country. That's one area where if you are a Westerner and your country is always getting involved in geopolitical issues, I do think there's some kind of risk in the future. Should that be a reason why you don't want to invest internationally? No, because you can invest in Singapore, you can invest in Western Europe, you can invest in Latin, you can invest in a lot of places, right? The new administration in Colombia is more in favor of being away from the U.S. than historically Colombia has been one of the most pro-U.S. places in South America. There's no calls to take anyone's property. There is a call that if you're a tax resident of Colombia and you have $600-some thousand worth of wealth, that they're going to apply some kind of wealth tax. That also happens in Western Europe. I mean, look at what happened in Greece during the financial crisis. They jacked up property taxes, something like 700%. And so people didn't want their inheritance. And so what I see is countries like in Poland, where they borrow from your retirement, from your pension plan, countries like the US with civil asset forfeiture and just this kind of wide approach of the law, which may eventually get sorted out, but for years you may not have your stuff. Countries like in Greece where they jack the property taxes up. My property taxes in Colombia, for example, are very, very low. I mean, people laugh when they hear what I'm paying. And I made an episode a while back where I talked about all my expenses to maintain this stuff. It is very, very cheap in most places. And so, also, some governments just may not really be in the mood. I mean, some of these countries, it's like, we'll get around to it tomorrow. So, I mean, there may be a certain laziness or an incompetence, or again, they just don't want to screw with foreign investors, because I think that there's a realization we can't afford to bother foreign investors. When I was in Nicaragua almost a decade ago, people said, look at who's in power. It's the guys who were running the place before, they're back in power. And it was like, yeah, you know what? They've matured and they realize we need some money to run this place. And so that's a realization, whether you like it or not. You're seeing more countries open up. If they're offering residence or citizenship, I would feel comfortable. Let's just put it in perspective. Plenty of Western countries pledge to do stuff and then don't do it, whether it's the US not paying the UN or countries not respecting the World Trade Organization, or look at what the UK is doing with its deal in Hong Kong. I mean, your country is violating its deals as well. And I'd rather go to a place where I'm going to get a higher return, I'm going to get more yield if I want it, I'm going to get residence or citizenship to basically expand my own personal freedom plan, because I think people who are successful need that. I'm going to have some money out of the jurisdiction. Maybe I'm going to play the geopolitics to where, listen, this Western side, the returns in the West are going to get, reduced in coming years. There are places where I think your property is going to keep going up. I think properties in parts of emerging Asia will keep going up. Properties in parts of emerging Latin America will keep going up. Say all you want about the politicians in parts of Latin America, properties have continued to go up. And so it's speaking from ignorance. My property in Turkey, up. Property in Colombia, up in US dollar terms since acquiring it, even with some of the chaos that's happened in the world. Can you say that about property that you bought a year or two ago in the United States or in Canada or Australia? Those property prices are dropping. And so besides the fact that I think it's just a better investment in some cases, it's easier to hold, lower carrying costs, higher returns, higher yields, diversification, possible residence and citizenship. This idea that because you're comfortable in your home country, you shouldn't trust some other country. It's probably your country that's doing more to take people's stuff, if you're from a number of places like the US, than it is someplace where they're welcoming you with open arms. That's the reason why I'm not really concerned about expropriation when I'm investing overseas. Of course you want to be diversified and not just put it all on red, but as part of a diversified plan where you're putting a little bit here, you're having second homes, you're making different investments. Some of the stuff could just be in stocks. I think, the geopolitical issue can largely work for you. You can protect it from working against you. And otherwise, I think diversification is a good thing. And really, I'm not concerned about it.